Here's a question. How do you go from broke at 25 to a millionaire by 31? Most people think it's impossible. I know, because I thought so too. But one idea, one shocking truth turned everything around for me. And today, I'll pass it on to you. Because if it worked for me, it can work for you too. In this video, I'm going to share with you exactly how I went from broke to millionaire in just 6 years. And it won't be what you expect. You'll learn why hard work on its own won't get you there, the shocking reason most people stay broke all their lives, and the principles that changed my entire financial destiny. More than that, you'll see how to apply those same principles in your own life starting today. If you've ever wondered why your effort isn't paying off, or how ordinary people can create extraordinary wealth, this will answer it. By the end, you won't just know what happened to me, you'll know what can happen for you. Let me be honest with you. I know what it feels like to be broke. At 25, I had excuses, but I didn't have money. I worked hard, but I had nothing to show for it. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've wondered why, despite all your effort, your bank account still looks the same. Most people blame the economy, the company, the government, bad luck. I did too. But then my mentor asked me a question that cut right through my excuses and revealed the shocking truth. That truth didn't just change my finances, it changed the course of my entire life. And today, I want to put that same truth in your hands. So here's what we'll cover. First, I'll take you back to the exact moment when I was broke, desperate, and embarrassed, the turning point that forced me to face the truth. Then, I'll reveal the shocking reason I stayed broke so long and why most people stay broke all their lives. Next, I'll show you the exact principles my mentor gave me, the ones that transform my philosophy, my habits, and eventually my bank account. Finally, I'll give you practical steps you can use right now to create the same kind of breakthrough in your own life. Along the way, you'll hear stories that may sound familiar, but with lessons that can flip your perspective upside down. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll see that the difference between broke at 25 and millionaire at 31 isn't luck, it's discipline, philosophy, and the choices you make every day. Here's something that may sound familiar to you, because it was painfully real to me. At 25 years old, I was broke, not a little short on cash, broke. I mean, no money in the bank, bills stacked on the counter, behind on obligations, and no plan for how to get out of it. I was working, I was putting in the hours, I was doing what I thought I was supposed to do, but every month the numbers still came up short. And the worst part wasn't the empty wallet, it was the embarrassment. It was the way it made me feel about myself. Because deep down, I knew the truth. I was old enough to know better, but I didn't have anything to show for it. I'll never forget the day a little Girl Scout came to my door selling cookies. They were only $2 a box. And I wanted to help her, I wanted to support her, but I didn't have $2 in my pocket. Not 20, not 5, not 2. And instead of telling her the truth, I lied. I said, sorry, we already bought some. When I closed the door, I leaned against it and I thought, how did my life come to this? That I have to lie to a Girl Scout because I don't have $2? That moment was a mirror. It showed me that my problem wasn't the price of cookies, it was the way I was living. I wasn't just broke financially, I was broke philosophically. See, at 25, I had excuses. Plenty of them. I blamed the company, I blamed the government, I blamed the taxes, the weather, the economy, the luck I never seemed to have. Maybe you've said some of the same things. If only I got paid more. If only I lived somewhere else. If only I had better breaks. And it's easy to think that way because when you're broke, you want something out there to blame. But here's the hard truth. And it took me a while to accept it. The problem wasn't out there. The problem was in here. And here's what I realized. Hard work alone doesn't guarantee wealth. I was working hard, but I was still broke. And if effort was all it took, then every laborer, every employee, every sincere, hardworking person would be rich. But they're not. Because effort without the right philosophy only keeps you tired and stuck. That was the harsh reality I had to face. And maybe you feel that sting too, working hard, but not getting ahead. Giving hours, but not seeing results. Feeling sincere, but still living embarrassed. And here's the turning point. When you finally face that reality, when you stop making excuses and stop lying to yourself about why you're stuck, you open the door to change. That moment at the door with the Girl Scout was humiliating, yes, but it was also a wake-up call. It forced me to stop pretending that things would get better on their own. It forced me to see that if I didn't change, nothing else would. So here's the lesson from my story at 25. Success doesn't begin with money, it begins with philosophy. It begins with the way you think, the way you approach life, the way you accept responsibility. Because until you change that, you can work harder and harder and still stay broke. But once you change it, everything else can begin to shift. And that's what happened next. At 25, I was broke and out of answers, but then I met a man who became my mentor. He asked me questions that cut through my excuses, and he showed me the shocking reason why I was broke and why I didn't have to stay that way. And that's the story I'll share with you next. Here's something my mentor said to me that changed everything. Jim, if you want things to change, you've got to change. If you want things to get better, you've got to get better. At first, I didn't want to hear it. I had a list of reasons why I wasn't doing well. I blamed the company for not paying me enough. I blamed the government for taking too much. I blamed the economy for not giving me a fair chance. I even blamed my family background, the way I grew up, the luck I didn't have. Maybe you've made that list too. Maybe you've thought, if only they would change, if only that would change, then my life would be different. But my mentor looked me right in the eye and said, Jim, your list is too long. Tear it up. And in its place, write one word, me. Now, I'll be honest, that stung. Because it's easier to blame. It feels better to say, the reason I'm broke is out there somewhere. It keeps my pride safe. It lets me think I'm a victim of chance instead of the author of my own story. But the truth is, as long as I was blaming circumstances, I was powerless to change them. As long as I kept the responsibility out there, my life would stay the same. It was only when I pulled it back in here, when I admitted the real reason I wasn't doing better was me, that things started to change. And that's the shocking reason most people stay broke all their lives, not because they lack time, or talent, or opportunity, but because they won't take responsibility. Excuses are comfortable. Excuses protect your pride. Excuses let you sleep at night without facing the hard truth. But excuses also cost you your future. They blind you to the real problem, and they chain you to the same results year after year. The economy doesn't decide your wealth, your philosophy does. The government doesn't determine your success, your habits do. Your boss doesn't set your destiny, your disciplines do. Until you see that, you'll keep giving your power away to things you can't control instead of taking hold of the one thing you can, yourself. I remember sitting there with that torn up list, staring at that one word, me. It was uncomfortable, it was humbling, but it was also the most liberating thing I'd ever done. Because suddenly I realized that if I was the reason I wasn't doing better, then I could also be the reason I started doing better. If I was the problem, I could be the solution. That shift from excuses to responsibility was the moment I stopped waiting for the world to change and started changing myself, and that one shift opened the door to every good thing that came after. So let me ask you, what's on your list? Who or what have you been blaming for where you are? And what would happen if you tore that list up tonight and wrote just one word, me? Because until you do, nothing changes. But once you do, everything can change. That's the first door out of poverty, out of frustration, out of mediocrity, the door of responsibility. And when I walked through that door, I began to see something else. Not only had I been making excuses, I had been working hard on the wrong thing. And that realization was just as shocking as the first. Because I discovered that while I was giving my best effort to my job, I wasn't giving any effort to myself. And that's what I'll share with you next. Here's the next great discovery I made. And it was like a bucket of cold water poured right over my head. I wasn't failing because I was lazy. I was failing because I was working hard on the wrong thing. And that's one of the biggest mistakes you can ever make, to think that sheer effort, raw hours, and endless hustle will eventually guarantee success. Because here's the truth my mentor revealed to me. Your job will make you a living, but working on yourself will make you a fortune. And I was doing the opposite. I was exhausting myself at the job while starving myself in personal growth. I used to think that if 8 hours didn't do it, maybe 10 hours would. If 10 wasn't enough, I'd push 12. I thought effort alone was the key. But what I didn't realize was that the company was paying me for my role, not for my potential. They were paying me for what I brought today. not for who I could become tomorrow. My paycheck wasn't a reflection of my heart or my sweat or my sincerity. It was a reflection of the value the marketplace placed on my current skills. And because I never improved myself, my value never increased. That's why I stayed stuck. Now let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed how two people can work the same hours in the same building, and yet one is paid 10 times more than the other? At first I thought that was unfair. But then I learned it wasn't about fairness, it was about value. The marketplace doesn't reward effort, it rewards value. And value only grows when you grow. That's why my mentor told me, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Because your job can only pay you for what you are, but if you expand your skills, if you sharpen your mind, the marketplace has no choice but to pay you differently. That was the shocking truth I had missed. I was doing everything I could to make a living, but I was doing nothing to build a future. I was trading all my time for wages and leaving nothing for wisdom. And as long as I worked harder on the job than I did on myself, I would always be limited by what the job could give me. But once I turned that around, once I began working harder on myself, on my philosophy, on my disciplines, everything changed. My value increased, my influence increased, and soon after, my income increased. So here's the lesson. It's not about working harder at the job, it's about working harder on yourself. Because when you improve everything else improves. Your relationships improve, your opportunities improve, your paycheck improves. You can only rise in the marketplace to the level you rise in yourself. And once you understand that, you stop blaming the company, you stop blaming the economy, you stop waiting for luck, you realize the real key is in your hands. That was the second big turning point for me. At 25, I was broke because I was working hard on the wrong thing. But when I shifted my effort from just my job to myself, the results began to multiply. And that's what led me to the next great principle that forever shaped my understanding of money. The marketplace principle, the idea that your income will always be a direct reflection of the value you bring. And that's what we'll explore next. Here's the principle that turned my whole financial life upside down and then set it right side up. Your income is a reflection of the value you bring to the marketplace. Not your effort, not your sincerity, not even how long you've been showing up. It's your value. And once you let that sink in, once you stop arguing with it and start aligning yourself to it, everything about your future can change. Because here's the truth. The marketplace doesn't care how long you've been struggling. The marketplace doesn't care how much you need. The marketplace doesn't care about your excuses, or how many hours you've clocked, or how tired you feel at the end of the day. The marketplace simply says, show me the value. Bring me something rare, something useful, something that solves a problem or multiplies a result. And if you do, I will reward you. That's the law. And the law always works. Now, at first I fought this idea. I thought, well, surely the marketplace should reward my effort. Surely all these hours, all this sweat, all this sincerity ought to count for something. But it didn't. And when I looked around, I saw the evidence everywhere. People working themselves nearly to death, laboring long and hard, and yet still broke. And then, on the other side, people who seemed to do far less work, at least in terms of raw hours, but who were earning fortunes. What was the difference? It wasn't hours. It wasn't effort. It was value. Let me give you an example. Two men can work the same 8 hours. One earns $5 an hour, the other earns $500. What's the difference? Not the clock, not the calendar, not the number of days in a week. The difference is in what they bring to the marketplace in those hours. One brings a common skill, one that almost anyone can do. The other brings a rare skill, one that very few can offer. The marketplace doesn't care about fairness in the emotional sense, it cares about fairness in the value sense. If you bring something few can do, you'll be rewarded accordingly. If you bring only what anyone can do, you'll be paid accordingly. That's how it works. My mentor used to tell me, don't wish it were easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for less challenge, wish for more skill. Don't wish for fewer problems, wish for more wisdom. At first I thought that sounded harsh, but then I realized it was liberating. Because if the problem was me, then the solution could also be me. If the marketplace wasn't rewarding me, it wasn't because the marketplace was unfair, it was because I hadn't become valuable enough yet. And the good news about that? I could fix it. I could improve. I could grow. I could work harder on myself. And when I did, the marketplace would notice. Think of it this way. Two carpenters work in the same town. One knows how to swing a hammer and drive a nail. The other knows how to design and build an entire house. Same trade, same town, different value. Who do you think earns more? Or take two doctors. One performs routine checkups. The other performs a rare surgery that only a handful of specialists in the world can do. Who do you think the marketplace rewards more? It's not about working harder. Both may work equally hard. It's about becoming more valuable in the service you provide. So let me ask you, where are you on that scale? Are you bringing something common, something replaceable, something anyone could do? Or are you bringing something rare, something refined, something the marketplace cannot ignore? Because if you're on the first side, don't expect high rewards. But if you're willing to cross over, to develop yourself, to become rare and valuable, then the rewards are waiting. That's not luck, that's law. And that's the great shift I made. I stopped waiting for the company to see my effort. I stopped blaming the government, the economy, and everyone else. I started asking, how do I become more valuable? And when I answered that question, my income changed. My future changed. My whole life changed. Now the question is, how do you raise your value? How do you actually make yourself so valuable that the marketplace can't help but reward you? And that, my friend, is where personal development comes in. That's the next step on this journey. And it's the turning point that took me from broke at 25 to a millionaire at 31. Here's the next turning point, and I can still see it as clearly today as I did all those years ago. My mentor said to me, Jim, formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. At first, I didn't quite understand. I thought school was the key. I thought if you just got through the grades, collected the diploma, and followed the routine, then everything else would fall into place. But there I was at 25, broke, embarrassed, and out of excuses, and my formal education hadn't solved that problem. That's when I realized something shocking. School had given me the basics to survive. But if I wanted to thrive, if I wanted to build a fortune, I was going to have to educate myself beyond the classroom. I was going to have to build the kind of mind and philosophy that the marketplace would reward. So I began a habit that changed my life. I started building a library. At first, it was just a few books, bought one at a time, sometimes borrowed, sometimes secondhand. But soon that little shelf grew. And eventually I had 1,000 books, biographies, histories, philosophy, business, leadership, classics of literature. Why so many? Because each one held a piece of wisdom I didn't yet have. Each one was a mentor I could sit with anytime I wanted. And night after night, I sat in my little house, broke but hungry, and I listened to the voices of the wisest men and women in history. I read about people who built nations, who built businesses, who built ideas that outlived them. And though I never met them, they became my companions. You see, self-education has a way of lifting you out of your current circumstances because it forces your mind to dwell on something greater than your problems. When you read about men like Lincoln or Carnegie or the philosophers of old, you begin to see that the struggles you face are not unique. You begin to realize that solutions exist, that principles are timeless, that human greatness is possible if you'll pay the price to learn it. And little by little, without even realizing it, you begin to change. Your words change, your thoughts change, your habits change. And when those change, the marketplace begins to reward you differently. Now, let me tell you why this is so important. Most people stop learning after school. They close the books, turn off the lessons, and spend the rest of their lives entertaining themselves instead of educating themselves, and then they wonder why their income never grows. They wonder why their opportunities don't multiply. It's simple. They stop planting seeds. Because every book you read, every seminar you attend, every mentor you listen to is a seed. And if you keep planting, sooner or later, you reap a harvest. I didn't have money when I started, but I made a decision. I would never go a day without feeding my mind. I would never go a week without adding something new to my library, whether it was a book, a recording, or a lesson from a seminar. And that decision transformed my life. In 5 short years, I went from broke to wealthy. Not because the job changed, not because the economy changed, not because luck finally came my way, but because I changed. And it all started with building my own library. So let me ask you, what's in your library? Not your school record, not your diploma, not your resume. What's on your shelves? What voices are you letting into your head? Because if you'll make the choice to fill your mind with the wisdom of the ages, you'll soon find your life filled with opportunities you never imagined. That's the power of self-education. But learning alone isn't enough. Collecting books, filling shelves, taking notes, all of that is good, but it doesn't pay the bills. The next step, the one that really transformed me, was learning to take those ideas and turn them into daily disciplines. Because knowledge by itself won't create wealth. It's discipline that bridges the gap between knowing and having. And that's the lesson I'll share with you next. Here's the principle that became the anchor of my entire philosophy. Success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day, while failure is nothing more than a few small errors in judgment repeated every day. That's it. Not one giant decision, not one dramatic event, not luck or fate or fortune, smiling on one person and frowning on another, just disciplines or errors compounded over time. And once I finally understood that, once I saw how simple it really was, I knew I could change my whole life if I would only change what I did daily. See, here's what I discovered. Discipline weighs ounces, but regret weighs tons. The discipline of saving a little from every paycheck that weighs ounces. It stings a little when you'd rather spend it, but it's light. The discipline of reading for 30 minutes instead of watching another hour of television that weighs ounces. It takes a little effort, but it's light. The discipline of getting up early, of practicing your craft, of writing your goals, of making the call you don't want to make. They all weigh ounces. They're uncomfortable in the moment, but they're light to carry. But regret is heavy. Regret is looking back at 40 years of work with nothing stored. Regret is seeing someone else live the life you could have lived if only you had practiced the disciplines. Regret is knowing you wasted time, wasted talent, wasted opportunity, and you can't go back. That weight crushes people. It breaks them. And the tragedy is they carried regret because they refused to carry discipline. My mentor explained it to me this way. He said, Jim, every day you're carrying something. The only question is, are you carrying the weight of discipline or the weight of regret? And that was sobering. Because I had been avoiding discipline. I thought I was escaping pain. I thought by skipping the small disciplines I was keeping life easy. But what I was really doing was piling up regret for the future. And when I saw that, I thought, if I'm going to carry something anyway, I'd rather carry ounces now than tons later. That shift changed everything. Let me give you an example. Imagine two men. Each earns the same wage. One spends everything he makes, lives for comfort, avoids the small discipline of saving. The other puts aside $10 a week, no matter what. After 1 year, the difference doesn't seem that big. After 5 years, it starts to show. After 10 years, it's enormous. One has nothing but bills, the other has security and options. What happened? Small disciplines versus small errors multiplied by time. And time is either your greatest ally or your greatest enemy, depending on which you practice. So I made a decision. I would choose disciplines. I would carry the light weights every day, saving, reading, investing, journaling, exercising, practicing gratitude, setting goals, reviewing progress. Some days I didn't feel like it. Some days it seemed too small to matter. But I did it anyway. And those little ounces of discipline began to reshape my character, my philosophy, my future. Within 5 years, those disciplines paid me back 1,000 times more than the effort they cost. And let me tell you, friend, that's the shocking reason I went from broke at 25 to a millionaire at 31. Not a lottery ticket, not luck, not a secret shortcut. Just a few simple disciplines practiced every day while avoiding a few small errors. It was that simple. And if you'll adopt the same principle, your next 5 years can look completely different from your last 5. Now, here's the natural question. Once you've embraced responsibility, once you've worked harder on yourself than on your job, once you've begun self-education and daily discipline, how do you move beyond wages altogether? How do you take what you've built and multiply it into streams of income that give you freedom? That's the step I want to show you next. Here's the next great lesson I had to learn. And it was both liberating and sobering. If all you ever do is trade your hours for dollars, then you'll always be trapped in the wage system. A job can give you a living, but it will never give you wealth. And if you don't break free from that mindset, you'll spend your best years working hard, being sincere, being loyal, and still end up broke or dependent. That's the wage trap. And to escape it, you have to take what you earn and begin planting it like seed. Because wages are for survival, but wealth is for freedom. And the bridge between the two is multiplication. I began to see my paycheck in a new light. It wasn't the harvest, it was the seed. And if I ate it all, I would stay hungry. But if I planted some of it, if I invested in myself, in my growth, in my future, then that seed could multiply into a harvest far greater than the wage that produced it. That's why I started saving, started investing, started building small ventures on the side. Not because I had extra, I didn't. I was broke. But because I understood the law of sowing and reaping, if you don't sow, you don't reap. And excuses never sow, only discipline does. Now let me give you a picture. Imagine two men again. One spends everything he earns. He enjoys today, but he starves tomorrow. The other puts aside a portion. At first it looks like the spender is winning because he has all the toys, all the comforts. But give it time, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. The one who planted has streams of income flowing back to him, investments, businesses, interest, dividends. The one who spent has nothing. Same wages, different choices, different philosophy, different results. That's the power of multiplication. And here's the key. You don't have to start big. You don't need thousands to begin. You need philosophy. You need discipline. You need the decision to treat part of your wage as seed for your future. Because once you do, the smallest stream can grow into a river. I know men who started by saving a little from each paycheck. And over time, those savings turned into investments. Those investments turned into businesses. And those businesses turned into fortunes. And I know others who spent it all, who retired with nothing, who ended their working years with regret. What was the difference? Not luck, not circumstances, just philosophy. When I finally learned this, I understood why. So many spend 40 years on the job and retire broke. They lived on wages alone. They never planted. They thought the job would take care of them. But a job was never designed to do that. A job pays you to show up. Wealth pays you when you don't. And the only way to get from one to the other is to multiply. So here's my challenge to you. Don't let a paycheck become a cage. Don't let wages dictate your destiny. Use your wages as a tool, as seed, as fuel for the future. Plant them in your education. Plant them in your savings. Plant them in investments. Plant them in building something of your own. Because one planted dollar is worth infinitely more than one spent dollar. And once you've built streams beyond wages, you'll taste freedom. You'll know what it means to be paid, not only for your hours, but for your growth, for your wisdom, for the value you've created. That's how I went from broke at 25 to a millionaire at 31. Not by working more hours, not by begging for more wages, but by changing my philosophy, practicing daily disciplines, and planting seeds that multiplied into freedom. And that's the choice in front of you now. And that brings us full circle. From the harsh reality of being broke, through the shocking reasons behind it, into the principles of value, personal growth, discipline, and multiplication. Now the question is, what will you do with it? Because the final step, the one that will decide your destiny, is not hearing these words, but acting on them. And that's the challenge I want to leave with you as we close. So here we are, friend, at the end of this journey together, and I want you to let these words settle deep, because what we've covered isn't just theory, it's not just good advice, it's not just another talk to nod your head at and then forget tomorrow. This is the story of how I went from broke at 25, embarrassed, humiliated, lying to a Girl Scout because I didn't have $2, to being a millionaire at 31. And the shocking part is, it didn't happen because of luck. It didn't happen because of talent. It didn't happen because of a miracle. It happened because of philosophy. It happened because I stopped making excuses. I took responsibility. I started working harder on myself than I did on my job. I embraced self-education. I practiced daily disciplines. And I learned to treat wages as seed for the future instead of harvest for today. That's the path. That's the difference. That's the reason my life turned around. So let's tie this together. First, you saw the harsh reality of being broke at 25, not because of circumstances, but because of excuses and poor philosophy. Then you discovered the shocking reason why most people stay broke not because of what's happening outside, but because of what's happening inside. From there, you learn the marketplace principle, that income is nothing more than a mirror reflecting the value you bring. Then we walk through the turning point, the power of self-education, the library that changed my life, and the simple truth that discipline weighs ounces, but regret weighs tons. And finally, we saw the way of escape, multiplying beyond wages, planting seeds that grow into streams of income, building a future that doesn't depend on a boss or a paycheck. That's the journey. That's the blueprint. That's how I went from broke at 25 to a millionaire at 31. But now the spotlight is on you, because it doesn't matter that I did it. What matters is, will you? Will you make the decision to stop blaming, to stop excusing, to stop waiting for luck? Will you choose to work harder on yourself than you do on your job? Will you pick up the book, attend the seminar, practice the discipline, save the dollar, invest the seed? Will you carry the ounces of discipline today so you don't have to carry the tons of regret tomorrow? Because that's the choice. No one can make it for you. No one else can walk it for you. Only you. So, here's my challenge. Tonight, take out a sheet of paper. Write down the disciplines you practice every day, not at your job, but on yourself. Not the hours you trade, but the habits that grow you. If the page is empty, don't despair. Just start. Add one discipline tomorrow. Add another the day after. Build your list. Because that list, not your paycheck, will decide your future. That list is the bridge between broke and wealthy, between frustration and freedom, between living as a victim and living as a victor. And let me leave you with this. If this message has spoken to you, if it stirred something inside, then don't stop here. Because there's another lesson you must learn, one that builds on this and takes it even deeper. It's the difference between setting goals and actually accomplishing them. Most people set goals but never cross the bridge to accomplishment. And in my next video, the bridge between goals and accomplishment, most people never cross it. I'll show you exactly why and how you can cross it. Click here and let's keep building together. Because if I can go from broke at 25 to a millionaire at 31, then so can you. But only if you choose to. Don't wait. Don't delay. Begin today. Because your philosophy is shaping your future even as we speak. And if you'll change it, you'll change everything.